So I'm rather lucky. I discovered my interest and passion for entrepreneurship rather early in my career. As a result, the world didn't quite have its chance to convince me of a number of assumptions that it's so willing to convince others of that are true about entrepreneurship. Instead, much of what I know about entrepreneurial work is rooted in my experience as an early participant at the University of Utah Foundry. For those of you unfamiliar with the Foundry refers to a group of students at the University of Utah several years ago who, out of their interest to start businesses, decided to do just that and to do it together. Out of a need to refer to themselves, to give themselves a name, we call ourselves the Foundry, and the name stuck. Today, the Foundry refers to an institutionalized program sponsored by the University of Utah, commonly referred to as an incubator, dedicated to the mission of training entrepreneurs and executives. Much has been said about the Foundry in the last few years since its inception. 5 cohorts, 300 entrepreneurs, 60 companies, and over $100 million in generated revenue certainly makes for a great headline. Unfortunately, very little has actually been said about the decisions and the beliefs that were adopted as a group that eventually dictated the group's culture, which had a real impact on the entrepreneurs that came from the Foundry. I'd like to share a few of those beliefs with you today. When the Foundry was conceived, we looked around at a few similar programs available in the area and available outside the States, and decided that we would not advertise or provide resources to our participants. After looking at programs that did advertise resources to its participants, we decided that those programs, unsurprisingly, recruited those who needed resources and not the resourceful. We wanted to learn to operate in conditions of extreme scarcity, and so we chose not to provide or seek resources directly. We decided not to recruit a roster of traditional mentors. Instead, we looked around at the types of conversations, the types of help that we needed as entrepreneurs, and decided for the most part that we were just as capable, if not more capable, at providing that mentoring to ourselves. And when the collective knowledge and experience of our group failed, we could often crowdsource that knowledge through the web. And as a result, we opted for a peer mentoring model and ignored traditional mentors. We valued people over ideas. We were idea agnostic, meaning that admittance to the Foundry relied not on your idea or your ability to convey your idea, the ability to convey the potential for a future business within the idea. Instead, we wanted individuals that, put simply, we like to hang out with. We were a group built around a peer mentoring model, and as a result, we needed individuals that we not only cared about helping, meaning that we liked you, but that you were coachable. We adopted a model called application by socialization, our fancy pants term for, hey, you should come hang out with us before you apply. You yourself, admittance was based on you. We decided that admittance wouldn't be based on an idea, that instead ideas were often very temporary, especially for new aspiring entrepreneurs, that they changed quickly, and that none of us in the group were capable of determining the value of an idea. So instead, we ignored ideas and focused on entrepreneurs and the individuals themselves. And we ignored business plans. We looked around We looked at our own startups. We looked at how they behaved, the things that they did when we attempted to grow them, and realized that oftentimes they made no sense viewed from a traditional business strategy lens. So we decided that we would not use the same tools that traditional businesses would also use. As a result, these beliefs, picked somewhat arbitrarily, not necessarily backed by empirical data, but just picked based on gut feeling, based on our own experiences dealing with other programs. These beliefs became later incredibly important to not only the culture, but to the entrepreneurs that we were able to both recruit and train. By ignoring resources, by not seeking them out directly, we learn to operate in conditions of extreme scarcity. We learn to become creative problem solvers and not just spenders of money. So that later when resources did come our way, we knew how to create leverage. We ignored traditional mentor programs. Instead, we opted for a peer mentor program. This resulted in us reaching out to each other in the group for support and for help, for mentoring. As a result, years later, we're still well-connected, supporters of each other, oftentimes still working and collaborating together. And by ignoring ideas and focusing on entrepreneurs, we developed real executive skill sets. Experiment design, media training, precision execution. These became the skill sets that each entrepreneur were taught if they're willing to learn and to listen. Now, these beliefs were important because they shaped our culture, which in turn shaped the types of entrepreneurs that we created. In the same way that the Foundry was able to reshape the way entrepreneurship was taught at the University of Utah as a result of the direct insights we were able to obtain from such a model. Salt Lake City has the same opportunity to redefine how we view entrepreneurship, how we view entrepreneurial work, the types of people who do it, who can do it. And by doing so, we have the opportunity to define and engineer a culture that produces the exact entrepreneurs we want to foster. Today, I'd like to share with you just 3 beliefs and assumptions that I believe Salt Lake City could adopt. I invite you to, for the remainder of today, to try them on with me, see how they fit, and if they make sense, to keep them. And if they don't, we can go ahead and replace them with others. The first concerns the value of an idea. I think as a community, we oftentimes attach the value of an idea to its potential to turn into a business, to create real business value, to create jobs, to create revenue. And this often isn't the case. In fact, we're all familiar with the small business failure rates. I won't quote them here today, we all know them. They're quite discouraging. And yet, we almost take pride, we're almost eager to quote them to young, aspiring entrepreneurs. And why do we do that? I think we do it out of a belief. We do it out of a belief that an idea is only worth pursuing out of its raw business potential value. Its ability to turn into a real business, to turn into a Google, a Facebook, an Instagram. And yet we ignore the real potential of an idea and why ideas are so valuable to a community of aspiring entrepreneurs. Sure, a few of them will turn into businesses, but ideas, entrepreneurial ideas, are valuable and should be encouraged. They should be sought after because of their ability to train and shape human capital within an entrepreneurial ecosystem. I instead invite you to reconsider the value of ideas. Sure, they turn into businesses, but instead, let's be more open about ideas. The best investors in this world are oftentimes just as often wrong as they are right about ideas. As a community, it is not our job necessarily to weed out good ideas versus bad ideas and encouraging the good. Instead, let's be accepting of all ideas, encourage the pursuit of them, and recognize their ability to shape and train entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs. Second, any individual is capable of becoming a fundable, contributing, and valuable entrepreneur, team member, and executive. And this can be done, these skills can be taught in as little as 3 to 6 months, and the skills can be developed in 3 years. I'm drawing on my own experience as the Foundry after watching 300 entrepreneurs go through and enter the program and complete the program, and to see countless others complete these classes at the University of Utah. In the video we watched shortly before going to lunch, we heard a little bit about strategy and how often those responsible at large corporations for deciding larger strategic decisions like to complicate those decisions, to attach large dollar spends to them, as if to justify their larger salaries and justify their own existence as a decision maker within those organizations. I think we as a community oftentimes make the same mistakes with entrepreneurship, overcomplicating the process, confusing it, mystifying it, wrapping it up in a black box that for aspiring young entrepreneurs confuses, discourages, and ultimately dissuades entrepreneurs for seeking their entrepreneurial ideas. Instead, at the Foundry, when we were able to wipe away and remove a lot of the challenges so commonly associated or so commonly quoted by our peers, the need for capital, the need for advisors and mentors, the need for a great idea, we were left with a rather straightforward, completely demystified, and ultimately optimistic view of entrepreneurship. And that is that entrepreneurship often starts with an idea for a solution to a problem, either experienced by the owner or observed by the owner. That idea is exposed to the community, oftentimes through dialogue with potential customers to validate the problem, and dialogue to confirm the solution, to confirm that it is indeed feasible, that it is indeed needed. Oftentimes, this dialogue evolves into a story about a validated problem, confirmed by customer interviews, backed by data, a story about a solution and its feasibility confirmed with designers and developers, manufacturers and suppliers. Compelling stories allow you as an entrepreneur to recruit and enroll team members and co-founders, enroll mentors and advisors, and recruit investors in some cases. Compelling stories become opportunities, and through proper execution, opportunities become new ventures. Yes, it is a rather simplistic model, fueled largely by dialogue. But we found that for those entrepreneurs that were willing to simply engage in that model, to simply engage in this process of engaging their community, by enrolling their community, by building a story around their problem and their idea, that those oftentimes are the most successful entrepreneurs. And that the most successful entrepreneurs often had, as a result, the listening of their community. Which I argue as the real value of a community is the ability to provide listening to its own entrepreneurs, to create opportunities for dialogue. I encourage us as a community to engage the full entrepreneurial stack, not just the celebrity entrepreneurs, not just the entrepreneurs written about in TechCrunch, or the entrepreneurs that have raised funding or have sold companies. I encourage you to take a more deeply invested approach to engaging the entrepreneurs at the top of the entrepreneurial funnel. Those young entrepreneurs who are just now beginning to show interest in entrepreneurial work, oftentimes through engaging you through an idea of theirs. I encourage you to provide opportunities for them to have listening. For when entrepreneurs are unable to find listening within their community, one of two things either happen. Often, that individual leaves the community. I think this often explains why we see some of our brightest individuals leave the state for other communities. We were either unwilling or unable to absorb their contribution, and so they left. If you were to look back at some of the early founding participants of the Foundry, I think you'll see that this is often the case. And second, those individuals must create their own communities to provide their own listening and then provide their own dialogue. For the first group of entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs at the University of Utah, this is exactly what happened. We created the Foundry to provide listening for our own participants when we were unable to find it at the university in our own community. Instead of rewarding listening to those with the best ideas in the community, remember I encourage you to be idea agnostic. I instead encourage you to filter individuals based on their own qualities as potential entrepreneurs. At the Foundry, we treated you as an executive, a real CEO the moment you entered the door. And you earned listening from the group by being first accountable and by behaving with integrity. And so long as you were to behave by being both in integrity and by being accountable, you continued to earn listening within the group. In closing, I would ask that we as a community reconsider some of our assumptions around entrepreneurs, what entrepreneurial work looks like, how we decide who we allow to engage with us in dialogue, who we listen to. Instead, focus on the individuals and not the ideas. As a result, I think we as a community may see similar results that we saw at the Foundry, which were that the participants that were created, that were the result of such a culture, were real executives that could be transferred, transplanted, and could join any team and provide real meaningful contributions. That each of these entrepreneurs may not have gone on to start legitimate businesses. Their own ideas may have failed. They may have gone on to start new ideas that also failed. But that the real success was the ability to create a valuable engine that created human capital that could be employed, that could start real companies, and could become contributing members of a real entrepreneurial community. Thank you.